Thank you, Rob, for this introduction. Thanks for all your distinguished speakers. For me, this tragedy probably began from the day I was born in Syria. It's been, like you mentioned, more than 50 years since the Assad regime has control of Syrian government and policy. For me, the beginning of what happened in Syria goes back to my early memories as a child. When I saw in '82 army soldiers going into my family's house and searching it, listening to stories from my mom and my dad, who were both doctors, and went to the city of Hama in central Syria to look after a patient. And this patient that they knew had 7 boys. And my mom, I still remember whispering to me the story and saying, like, I saw them that they were leaving their house. So I was like, they're packing. And I was like, where are you going? Like, you're renovating the house? Said, no, our house was confiscated and we had to leave. And my mom asked, like, where's the boys? I'm not seeing anyone. And she said, well, they were all killed. And my mom was like, how? Like, what happened? Did this during the war? She said, no, actually they were safe, but when they came to our house, the army, Syrian army, they took them downstairs and shot them. And she said, I always hoped that they would leave the youngest, who is like 8 years old. And I begged the officer, can you please just leave this one? And he said he took this, my boy, and threw him from the window and said, you can go and fetch him. This is a story and this is the beginning of the trauma for a lot of Syrians. It started long time ago. So when I was a hospital general manager in Aleppo and the revolution in Syria started, I always hoped that it will be different. But somehow in the back of my mind, these horror stories were always present. And I was always afraid that this is what's going to happen. And unfortunately, my worst fears materialized. We saw a brutality unimaginable. Unimaginable that whole cities were bombed, wiped out by barrel bombs, and then besieged for starvation. The horror that we went through was so immense that at one point, whenever I was outside of Syria and someone puts a documentary, I tried to avoid it about Syria. It's just a way that brings huge emotions that most of us that went through this trauma wanted to forget, wanted to somehow to think that we can continue our life without thinking about it. I was on November 27th actually on the border between Turkey and Syria on one of our missions for my organizations to help Syrian who are displaced. When attack happened on my hometown city of Aleppo, I thought, oh my God, this is going to be horrific. A lot of people, displaced people who are like more 4 million along the Turkish border are going to suffer. But to my astonishment, in 11 days, the regime that I lived all my life with collapsed. It was so fast that most of these people that did the killing and the torture and the bombing are still in Syria. And now, as Syrians, we have this big question. What do we do? How do we build our future? Of course, I wish that more Syrians would learn about the Holocaust, learn about Rwanda, learn about other atrocities and genocides that happen around the world. That's a huge lesson. Every atrocity, every event, it has its uniqueness, and we can't compare any atrocity to the other one. But there are lessons, and I heard today a lot of important lessons that we need to do and probably would work in Syria. But one most important thing that I suffered through my life of advocating for helping the Syrian people to get rid of this nightmare that has been going on for 50 years, was disbelief that this nightmare exists. disbelief that these atrocities exist. Always when I go and tell someone what I know, what I saw, it sounded to them too much. You're exaggerating. And actually, probably I was telling only 10 or 20% of the actual horrific incidents that happened to Syrians every day. When Damascus was liberated, people went to the largest prison called Sinai. There is more than 100,000 people that were documented as arrested. People thought that most of them are there. The sad truth was most of them were already killed. Killed under torture, killed in horrific circumstances, hanged, shot. It was only several thousand people that were free. People didn't believe that. They still believe that they're there. They couldn't believe that 100,000 people will be killed. They dug tunnels, they dug under it, there was nothing. Secret presence, there was no secret presence. The sad truth is that most of them are killed. So as Syrian and as a person, I think the most important thing for us, for the future, to heal and to move on, is establish the truth. What is the truth? What happened in Syria? Why were all these people killed? Is it a sectarian thing? That's the question that no one is asking. Are they targeted because of their being Muslim of a Sunni sect? That's something that needs to be established, like it was established in other countries like Iraq with the massacres and genocidal acts against Kurds and Shia. It should be established in Syria. That's a valid question. That's a question that will put to rest a lot of these things that people have them in the back of their mind, think they are truths, but they don't know if it's truth or not. This is why what I've listened to and what I've heard is very important to do. We have to document all these eyewitness accounts. We have to document the perpetrators of these atrocities. Why did you do it? Was it an order? Did anyone order this officer back in the 80s to kill 7 boys and to throw one off the balcony? And this happened again and again from 2011 to 2024. Was it an order for you to go to a village and cut the throats of children? Was that an order? Or was it an act of revenge or act of sectarian violence? What was it? We need to establish all these truths. Once we establish all these truths, when we document, once we do, then we think about how do we build the future? How do we deal with our fellow citizens and their supporters that enable them to do this? And this is where we can learn a lot from Germany, learn a lot from Rwanda and other places. Because we don't want to build a country based on a cycle of revenge. We want to build a country that understands how horrific to do such crimes and how destructive to your own country and your own fabric to do such crimes. This trauma is going to probably live with us forever, for all our life. But at least if we can do something to not give it as a heavy inheritance to our children and grandchildren, then we would probably build something for Syria and did something for the larger Middle East and did something for the world. So this is a very, very important subject that we need to address, and we need to figure out a way forward. And I can tell you, Syrians are so traumatized, they can't do it alone. And they need all the help that they can from everyone around the world to guide us through this very, very terrible chapter of our